Mike Bohn joined now once again by Shawne Merriman, the promoter of Lights Out Xtreme Fighting, NFL great, all that stuff. Shawne, it's been a little bit since we chatted. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
I'm good. Can't complain. Just getting ready for the holidays, the new year, and everything, man. I guess you got a show coming up January 6th, right? That's the first one of the year. So getting an early start on this 2024 run, was that kind of part of the game plan here to get a show in during this kind of down period in MMA as far as like the big promotions too?
Yeah, and I've been around this sport for 17 years, man, and I know exactly how it is. Like around the holiday time, normally most fighters, like to take this time off and stuff like that, eat a little bit, hang out with the family. But after talking to our matchmakers and reaching out to the fighters, managers, and coaches, man, everybody was on board to make this happen. And I do know that there's a blank period, so I know that people will be watching us probably a little bit more on Fubo because there's not a big fight going on right now. So I made that decision to go ahead and pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, and I think last time we had spoken, you said the deal with Fubo was coming up at the end of 2023, right? So did you guys, obviously, you came to terms on a new deal. Anything you can share as far as details with that?
Yeah, we got 5 more fights, 4 more after this next fight in January left on Fubo. But it's been great, man, because we've seen the viewership jump. 2 fights ago we were up 70% viewership. This last fight from 11 to 12 we were up 90% viewership. And I think for us, man, I believe in everything being organic, right? We haven't spent any money in marketing and trying to pay for spots or anything like that. Everything we've done so far, but to this point, has all been organic, and that has grown us in the right way, the right eyeballs. And I've always been like really close with the fans, man. Even like back in my playing days, I think the fans will tell you if they like what you're doing or not. And when we started to see jumps in viewership like that, fighters now are reaching out all over the country to get on cards. And I can tell you, man, it wasn't always like that, especially, starting out. People knowing me as a football player, but they didn't know me as a, owning an organization like this. And it's gotten out pretty fast. And we're trending up, man. Fubo hasn't seen any jumps like this other than their international soccer. So it's been really cool, man. It's been fun to build this.
That's fantastic. When you mentioned like that organic growth versus, putting stuff monetarily, like, is there a space where or like a point in time where you say like, we've hit this much in organic growth and maybe we do something else to bring even more eyeballs in? And like, how do those discussions and I guess placement of resources work as you kind of figure that stuff out?
Look, it's a very competitive market, man. And we're not looking to compete with anybody. That's never been my goal, getting in the spot. For me, it's about building other verticals around this thing to make it fun and interactive for the fan, like fan engagement tech. We're going to be introducing in 2024, being able to display more data up on the screen while fans watch our fights and able to win stuff during the fights by clickable links through Fubo. So I just always stayed away, man, from I hate the comparisons of leagues and all the competition. Like, you can be great on your own. Right, you can be great at what you do. You can carve out a space of your own for your fans and people to watch you grow. We're just not. We're not in that space. We want to compete with anybody, man. It's been a lot of that lately, and I try to stay away from that as much as possible.
Yeah, it's good to operate in your own wheelhouse too. And I see some of the stuff that like you do on social media. I know you like to like share some of those viral clips and kind of like with the lights out hashtag. Is there have you like ever reached out to any of those people? I know some of the videos are old and things like that, but like, have you ever had something that's kind of like synced up? You've seen like a viral video and you either signed or contacted someone based off that?
Yeah, it's funny. I posted videos and people that DM me and say, "Oh, that was me in the video," right? Yeah, that was me in the video. And so let me tell you how the whole sign them up and don't sign them up thing happened. So obviously more people find out about me being in this space and running lights out and everything else. So I would have fighters sending me links all the time about, I say, hey, they want to fight on the card. I say, show me your last fight. What's the promotion you fought for? And send me something so I can send it to the matchmakers. And, we can find a way to sign you up or don't sign you up. So some of these fighters that sent over were actually pretty good. And we actually ended up signing. And some of them would send me videos of them getting knocked out. Right. And I was like, I would ask them, I said, hey, do you got anything else that you want to send over outside of this? They're like, no, that's it. I said, dude, I can't sign you up. And so once that started happening, over and over again. I kind of made a joke about it, and I didn't think the video was going to be as funny. I just clicked a fighting video or somebody fighting and get knocked out or winning. And the first couple ones got over 250,000 views, and I was like, oh, okay, people will like this, right? Sign them up or don't sign them up. But the cool thing is, man, I just formed a partnership with Street Beefs, and we got an opportunity now to work together with them. And I've been a fan of what they've been doing content wise and what they're building over there. Very raw and organic, edgy, and just that's what we're about, man. We're just creating cool stuff that people want to see and be a part of. So basically, they have these tournaments in each city. So the winner of each tournament, the city on Street Beefs, will now have an opportunity to sign with us. And so we just wrapped that up, and this is the first time I get a chance to talk about it. But I can't wait for people to be a part of this and see that what we've because it took a bit to get it done, but it's very raw, organic, man. I think that what Street Beefs built along with what we're doing and giving it. Everything what we do is about giving opportunity, right? We understand that some of these fighters want to go to the UFC and kind of progress in their career. So we're okay with that. We're totally fine. And so I took even a more of organic and raw and edgy approach by partnering up with Street Beefs. That is going to it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun with that because they have these fights in every city, and the winner of the championships of that city will have an opportunity to sign with Lights Out Xtreme Fighting. So I cannot wait for to kick that in gear.
That's very interesting. So when do you think we might see like one of those first fighters appear? Maybe like mid-year next year or something? Or how do you think?
Sooner than that. I believe they have a big fight January 6th that they're starting out with, and the winner of that tournament will try to get on as soon as of February. We fight again in February 17th. We'll try to have one of their fighters, that winner of that tournament, on February 17th in Lights Out Xtreme Fighting. So it's fun for me, man. I just remember those days of watching, Masvidal and Kimbo and all these guys come from the raw approach of this sport. And so forming a partnership with them, man, it's going to be great. It's going to be fun. Everybody has a real shot and opportunity once you win with them to come and fight for us.
Awesome. So that's the next date after Jan 6 is February 17th. Do you have the ones beyond that set up as far as like dates or?
Yeah, well, January 6th in Long Beach, February 17th to be in Long Beach. Looking at San Diego. I'm sorry, not San Diego, Texas, San Antonio, Texas in March. And at the end of April, San Diego.
Okay, very nice. So
we I normally line up about 3 or 4 fight dates at a time. And sometimes it can change, but for the most part, January 6th in Long Beach, February 17th, Long Beach, Texas, San Antonio, Texas in March, and in April, San Diego.
Very nice. Why Texas? Why is that somewhere that you kind of chose to operate outside of California?
Well, they, it's a big football town down there. So I've done a lot of media in San Antonio, and we have a great group of fighters and gyms that want to go and put it on. And we're looking at this venue now. We'll talk to this venue called the Techport in San Diego. We're trying to lock them down right now. But we can't wait, man, because there's a lot of great fighters right out there in Texas, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth. There's a lot of great gyms, and we want to kind of bring a show down there and make it big.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as this January 6th show, I believe your first female main event, is that correct?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, like it's a title fight, Montez versus Cataline, I believe her name is pronounced.
Yep.
Tell me how this fight came together and why you thought it was the right fit to have females headline for the first time.
Yeah, this was big for us, man. Our matchmakers and team do a great job at matchmaking. I typically stay out of the matchmaking side of it, but when I found out that Abby Montez and Jackie were available and they were down to fight, I said, let me step in here. And I knew the coaches and managers, and we pushed and got it done, man. But this is our biggest one so far. I mean, we got a lot of great fights, and Gilbert Nakatani is on this one back. He's a great. People love him. He throws it out. Jake Woodley, former D1 wrestlers on this card as well. We're pretty stacked up, man, and I can't wait because the truth of the matter is we're getting a lot of attention right now, and fighters know that because our viewership on football and what we're doing, this is the best shot for them to fight for us to have a shot at the UFC one day, and it's been fun.
That's great. And I know like anyone else on the card that kind of has you excited. I know you've like dropped some nuggets here and there, maybe like a former NFL player or something like that. Is there anyone that kind of stands out or like from that vein or just in general?
Yeah, my pick, and I think it's going to be fight of the night is Abby and Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
We got some bangers there, and I think that I'm gonna see how long we can keep Jake. Jake Woodley's another guy who, and I actually saw a video of him taking down Bo Nichols in practice. And so I was like, oh, you know what, we got to make this happen. So he's one that's gonna have some fights for us. He may have a shot at the UFC at some point as well if he keeps going. But my fight of the night, man, is I believe it's gonna be Abby and Jackie. I think that's gonna be a banger.
Yeah. And what about like the cards beyond that? I know every time we've kind of talked about this, you've said you're using your relationships and people that come in that are former athletes from other sports that want to do this. Is there anything that you can kind of tease in 2024 that we might be able to see, or anything that's locked in?
I'm working on a former D lineman from an NFL Super Bowl champ to have a fight for us here in 2024. Very big name. If people put two and two together, he's been training a little bit. He's been posting, and I'm working to get that done. I just talked to him and his wife to try to push this through. So I'm hoping to put something together and be able to announce that on that February 17th show about the signing of him. But I've been talking to the NFL legends about former guys transitioning, because the truth is, man, there's a lot of guys that want to compete, and everybody don't know the pathway, like which camp and what's the process and what do I do? How do I get, signed up? What's the process like? And I've been around this thing for 17 years, man, and I've, kind of walked these guys through it. But there's a ton of former athletes in 2024 that's going to be coming over to take fights, and some not as big name, but you got a couple guys with bigger names. And the one I'm talking about, we're looking at announcing here in February, is a big one.
Yeah. How much, when you're talking to those guys who obviously, in NFL, there's a certain expectation of maybe what kind of money you make and things like that to get them to come onto a platform like this, like very early on. We know a lot of fighters in MMA, if they're, 0-0, 1-0, like that level, when you're building experience, the money isn't the same as when you're fighting, UFC title fights and things like that, and maybe what they expect through their other things. So when you're discussing with them, like, is that something that's on their mind? Like, I would really like to do this, but that part needs to come into play too.
Yeah. And, look, these guys made a ton of money playing ball already, right? So it's not like a money thing where they're trying to make a living anymore. They're set. They don't need this. But it's and we talked about this last time. A lot of guys struggle in the transition, trying to figure the next phase of their life out a lot. And I've found in my just being in this sport that the transition is a lot easier when you pick up one of these disciplines. And I don't care if it's boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, you're just rolling, whatever, grappling, whatever it may be. These guys are finding their way back on their feet and getting involved in this sport. And so what you try to do is, not put anything out there that's disrespectful, right? You want to put something on the table that's fair to at least get them to look at it. But with the guys that were looking at transitioning, they're not going to fight for me fight for us 5 times, 6 times. They're going to get considered for the UFC. And I've mentioned this to Dana briefly. I even talked to him about it the other day at the World MMA Awards, and just about how many former athletes are trying to find their way in this sport and is going to have success. And so if they have that shot at the UFC at some point, man, that's for me, that's awesome. We don't have a problem with that at all. I mean, if we're the platform for them to get there, I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah. Have you ever had a conversation with Dana about like maybe using your organization? Like, I know they've had guys on Contender Series and they'll sign them to like kind of development contracts, so to speak, where they're technically like signed to the UFC, but they'll kind of pay them and they'll fight elsewhere just to gain experience, things like that. Have you talked to him about kind of using your promotion perhaps for something like that for these developmental fighters?
Briefly, man. But I like to bring something tangible to the table, man. Like, I don't really go and ask for a whole lot. I got a lot of respect and admiration for Dana and just what they built. And it's crazy being in this sport and in this side of the business. I look back and see what they did when there was no social media, right? There was, the outreach was completely different. The internet wasn't as big when they were building. I mean, hell, man, even the venues that probably told them no because they thought the sport was too barbaric, right? I mean, we don't want to be involved in that kind of thing. So to look at now to what I'm doing and building, it opened my eyes. I got a different level of respect, man, for what they built. And people can feel whatever they weigh personally about Dana or the UFC or whatever. I'm just talking about the business side of it in general. What they built is a mega monster, and I know other organizations think they're going to come and compete and take the spot, and co-promotions and they're so far ahead of everybody, and I don't see anybody catching them, at least no time soon, but maybe ever.
Yeah, who knows? They got a big lead over the industry, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation if it wasn't for the what the UFC's built. So you have to give them that respect at least. But did you go to UFC 296 while you were out there for the awards?
I didn't. I missed it, and I stayed back and watched it with a bunch of friends. But I did get a chance to talk to some of the guys, including Dana, that was at the World MMA Awards, which is cool because I presented there. And so the sport is so big and global now. Back when I actually presented about 5 or 6 years ago, it's changed tremendously. People just flying in for this thing, that's just flying in for the UFC fights, and how global is this, such a global phenomenon now, man. It's a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. Was there any big takeaway you had from the fight, UFC 296, whether it was Tony Ferguson's loss again, Colby Covington, anything like that kind of came to your mind when you look at this maybe from the analyst side?
Yeah, I mean, look, Tony's my guy. We actually have one of his pupils, his students, Tommy Aaron, that fights for us a lot, for them on our cards. So Tony comes to our fight, and being a former athlete, man, you never want to retire. And in fact, we're the last ones that think that we don't need to. And I've been through it. I'm speaking from experience until, you're watching a film and people start questioning, can you play anymore? And then you're finally, because we're mentally, we're so strong, we can't accept the fact that we're ready to retire because we just can't accept it. So, and then this is a sport, man, too, that if you stay too long, it can be very dangerous. And, Tony has done so much for this sport, so much for the UFC. I would hate to see him go out any other way than on top, and us remembering him, Tony, the Tony Ferguson that we all know. And this goes across the board. I dealt with it, man, where I watched film and I said, you know what, this time, that's it, and I had to move on. So yeah, and the Leon Edwards fight and Kobe fight was just, it is what it was. I mean, I think that Leon has an opportunity to go down as one of the best to do it if he keeps up this pace too.
Yeah, no, I'm curious. I want to circle back on Tony there. And, no one wants to call for a guy to retire, but this is the way it goes. And obviously, I think you kind of laid out why you can speak to it well. Football is obviously a very dangerous sport as well, and you don't want to kind of overstay your welcome. When you were coming to those thoughts late in your career, was it all you that kind of finally made that choice, or was there people around you that you trust their opinion? And it's hard when you finally can start to listen to someone, or when it seeps in. I guess how do you kind of see that, whether taking into account the outside voices, the people close to you, and then your internal voice to make a decision like that?
It was all of it, because after my last game, I played a great game against the New York Jets. It was probably one of my best games as a Buffalo Bill. And I remember the GM at the time, Doug Welling, came and talked to me. He said, man, we want to get you back here. You look great. And in my head, I'm thinking man, my mentally, I can still do it, but physically, my body is not the same anymore. I can't recover. I don't have the explosion anymore. And it was a real conversation that I had to have myself, because if your body can't hold up to do that, it's the same thing with fighting. It's the exact same thing. If your body, no matter what your mind is telling you to do, if your body can't hold up to compete, it is extremely dangerous. And that's why, when you look at somebody like Tony Ferguson, it's yeah, you can go in there and fight, but how are you going to look? How are you going to perform? And when you can't perform anymore, it becomes very dangerous, man. So I hope that at some point he considers it. He's a hell of a warrior, and has done so much in this sport that he just come to the realization that it's time.
Yeah. Do you, as an athlete too, on that sense, do you ever think about like your legacy and how maybe staying too long could damage it? Obviously, you look at someone like yourself, you performed at such great heights and you're not doing the same thing. Do you ever feel like it takes away? Like I know in team sports, you can kind of hold on maybe a little bit longer or adjust your role or things like that. But as a fighter, you're just always out there. It's still one-on-one until the very end. And, you look at someone like BJ Penn, who, I think people think stayed a little too long too. And he achieved such great heights. And you wonder how the 7 straight losses kind of impact how people view your overall thing.
Right.
Do you ever take that into consideration too?
Of course, absolutely, because people only remember some of the last things you did, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
what did you do for me lately? And like BJ Penn, who was so dominant and such a staple of the sport for so long, to see those last 6, 7 losses he had, and some of those losses that BJ had were brutal. They were brutal losses, and so you hate to see your hero, go out the way he can go out. And it definitely crossed my mind. I was like, man, I've been a Pro Bowls, I've been all Pro, up for Defensive Player of the Year 2 or 3 different times, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and now I'm sitting around hobbling around the field and I can't get to the football anymore. And so while you're patted on the back as a warrior, people will sometimes just remember the last things you did. And so I hope that Tony Ferguson figures that out at some point in time. But it is one of the toughest things to do as a athlete to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, I really appreciate that insight. I think I hope a lot of people listen to that and kind of what you shared there because it's obviously very relevant to our sport as well. I guess just one of the last things before I let you go, I think around midseason, whenever we talked last time, you kind of gave some Super Bowl insights on who you think might be there. What do you think now as we're like a little less than 2 months away? Has your opinions evolved radically since the early weeks of the season? What are you kind of thinking we're trending towards here?
This is the craziest season I think we've had in a long time because there's no clear-cut winner anywhere, right? You would say, okay, Philly was definitely going to Super Bowl. From last year, they were 10-1 before they actually start tanking, and then the last 2 or 3 games, it's like, what the hell, right? So you kind of got almost, in a sense, kind of moved them off of the board because they haven't beat anybody worth beating, right? A good team. San Francisco 49ers, I would think, is the only clear-cut favorites right now, where they're just so much better than everybody else. On the NFC side, AFC side, you got to go with the Ravens. I think the style of football that the Ravens playing right now, they're putting a lot of fear in people and just their ability to make plays, man. Lamar Jackson, even though he's not up for the MVP stat-wise, the stuff that he's doing, right, being elusive and still being able to throw the ball down the field, that offense with Odell and them running the football the way they are, that defense with those 2 inside linebackers, my 2 favorite players are Queen and Smith to watch right now. They're so damn good. And their pass rushing coach, Chuck Smith, was my pass rushing coach during the off seasons when I played. And so when I saw that they were bringing Chuck Smith on the staff, I said, okay, they're going to be really, really good this year, and they are.
Yeah. Were you ever buying that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to come back from that Achilles at any point in this season? I know he kind of officially just kind of called it the other day and said it's not happening, but they were building that up like it might actually be some miraculous, unprecedented return. Were you ever thinking that was remotely possible?
Hell no, absolutely not. Because, I tore my Achilles. That ultimately, my Achilles what got me out the game, right? So I had a total reconstruction of my knee. Actually, I came back from that fine. I didn't hinder myself. But what happens is I was compensated from either side and I ended up tearing my Achilles. Now, in football especially, it's such an explosive sport, how fast you can get from point A to point B. Your Achilles is everything.
Yeah.
And when I tore my Achilles, I just became, an average, above average guy, but I wasn't elite. So when I even heard him being able to come back possibly for the season, I was thinking like, hell no. Like, I remember walking around, even when I got out the cast or whatever they put you in, the splint, and then now you got on a walking boot for 4 to 6 weeks. Now you're learning how to walk without a boot. When I saw him walk into the stadium and throwing on the field without that walking boot, I was like, this dude's something else. Something's going on that we haven't seen before. He might be an alien for real, because I just remember that long and grueling process of getting your Achilles back healthy again. It is the worst injury, in my opinion, the worst injury in sports. If you play any kind of explosive sport, the Achilles is the worst injury you can have. And to see him even contemplating being able to come back this year was impressive. But I hope for the longevity of him, if he's really gonna play a couple more years, that he don't rush it back and just get ready for next year.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the Achilles one. Like we see Jamahal Hill obviously dealing with that on the UFC side right now. But I remember, like an ACL used to be like a career ender, and now it's like it's a pretty standard injury. It's 9 months, you can be back. They have such great surgeries for that. But the Achilles, it doesn't seem like the evolution of either that surgery or the recovery has evolved in that same way.
Yeah, and I've reached out to Jamahal Hill, and I was walking him through all the process and what he should do, how many times he should work out, what he should be taking to speed up the process as far as all your fish oils, your new I've been through it. Which doctors for therapy to go see. So the first thing when I saw Jamahal Hill tear his Achilles, I reached out and said, dude, go see this person, do this, do that, because somebody like that with that level of talent, we can't wait to see him back in the cage.
Yeah, how scary is that too? Like coming back from that, it's one thing I'm sure. Like you came back from your NFL stuff to do that. You can maybe go in for a play, come out and do that, and like maybe test it a little more in practice. You're going into a fight. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to cover it up. So you need to, I guess, know that thing is 110% when you come back, but you don't know for sure until you actually compete. So it's really tough, right?
Yeah, it's easier. It's easier in MMA. And I'll tell you why, because you can go at your own pace, right? If you start training, you go through a camp, you can back off any point in time you want. If you don't feel great that day, you can back off. In football, it's 22 weeks, right? Yeah. I mean, when Sunday come around, you are going. I don't care how you feel, right? And so I think that in football it's a lot different. Also, you're wearing cleats, the explosion cutting and pushing off of that thing, also with somebody else pushing up against you. So Jamahal Hill, he'll be completely fine. He'll come back. You won't even notice a difference in what he's doing. And that's why his injury is going to be fine when he comes back.
Love it. That's good insight there. Okay, well, I think I've taken enough of your time. We've covered a lot here, Shawne. It's always great to chat with you. Any last words you want to share to the audience as far as the Jan 6 show, where they can watch, if tickets still available, that kind of stuff? Anything you want to say?
Yep. Lights Out Xtreme Fighting 13, Saturday, January 6th in Long Beach. If you guys are in Southern California, you don't want to miss this one, our first women's title event. You can get your tickets at lightsoutxcept.com, and we'll be live on Fubo TV, Fubo Sports. If you guys don't have Fubo, make sure you get it.
Definitely. All right, man. Appreciate it. We will talk again in the new year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that stuff, and we'll talk soon.
You got it, man. Happy holidays.